an experience that still makes my skin crawl whenever I think about it. During a long holiday, my boyfriend and I set off on a long-awaited trip. We had done our research in advance and even booked a highly rated guest house. It was nestled at the foot of a mountain with picturesque views. But when we arrived, we were stunned. The guest house had 3 floors, but it looked like it had been abandoned for years. The walls were cracked. When we walked into the room we had booked, we were hit with a strong, musty smell. My boyfriend and I exchanged looks, frowning as we stepped in. It was nothing like the pictures online. I took out my phone to search for other options nearby, but found that all nearby hotels were fully booked, and the nearest alternative was more than 50 kilometers away. With a sore back and no choice left, I resigned myself to lying on the bed, just about to close my eyes for a rest, when I found unidentified hair on the pillow. How long had it been since this place was cleaned? I barely slept that night. The windows wouldn't close properly, and the wind howled all night. My head was throbbing by morning. As soon as the sun came up, I went to confront the owner. But to my shock, he looked completely indifferent and flat out refused to give us a refund. What was supposed to be a relaxing trip had turned into a nightmare. Furious, I gave the guest house a scathing review. Terrible place, dirty rooms and an arrogant owner. Feels like staying in a haunted house. Don't stay here unless you want to regret it for life. A few days after the holiday ended, I suddenly got a call from the guest house owner. His intention was clear. He wanted me to delete the bad review. Remembering the awful experience, I refused immediately, but he wouldn't give up. He kept calling, apologizing again and again. His tone was very humble, completely different from how he was before. I couldn't help but smirk a little. When he said they had renovated the place and especially invited us to stay again, free of charge, I eventually agreed. When we returned, the guest house looked completely different. The rooms were clean and tidy. It was nothing like before. Surrounded by beautiful scenery and fresh air, I finally began to relax and felt a pleasant shift in mood. With a big smile, the owner told us, "Tonight, we've prepared barbecue and beer just for you. Hope you like it." I smiled again, this time involuntarily. Who knew a bad review could be this powerful? Thinking about the strange turn of events that brought us back, I smiled at the owner and said, "We'll leave you a good review." But at that moment, the owner's smile froze. In the next second, his expression turned odd. He stared coldly at me and said slowly, "I want you to leave it right now." His sudden shift in attitude left me frozen. I felt uneasy all over. But since I had agreed earlier, I went ahead and deleted the bad review, replacing it with a positive one. After checking his phone, the owner squinted and then gave me a creepy smile. That smile stood out disturbingly in the night. That's when I noticed the entire guest house was eerily quiet. It felt like my boyfriend and I were the only ones staying there. After dinner, we hurried back to our room. The mountain weather had changed quickly, and soon it was pouring rain. Raindrops hit the leaves outside with a sharp rustling sound. The curtains swayed wildly with the wind. I shivered and walked over to shut the window. Suddenly, a pale face appeared outside. It was the guest house owner. "Having fun today?" he asked in a deep voice, speaking through the window. His unblinking eyes were fixed on me. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest. I snapped out of it after a second and stiffly replied, "Yes, very much." He chuckled darkly, then turned and walked away from the window. I quickly shut it and drew the curtains tight, cutting off everything outside. But even so, my heart continued pounding uncontrollably. In the middle of the night, I suddenly woke up. My boyfriend was still playing on his phone beside me, so I asked him to get me a glass of water. He searched the room but couldn't find any bottled water. Seeing it was only a little after 11, he decided to go ask the owner. But as soon as he opened the door, the owner was standing right outside, staring straight at us. Again, he silently handed over 2 bottles of water. Seeing the water in my boyfriend's hand, I could no longer stay calm. My boyfriend also looked uneasy. Everything that had happened so far flashed through our minds. The owner's service had been too perfect. So perfect, it was disturbing. Felt like he had been watching us the whole time. We exchanged a worried glance. No matter what, we couldn't stay here another second. We grabbed our bags and fled. But just as we started the car, the owner appeared beside the window, again, staring at me with that same creepy look. "Are you two leaving already?" he asked. I let out a terrified scream as my boyfriend slammed the gas pedal. Through the rearview mirror, we watched the owner's eerie expression slowly fade into the distance. I woke up inside a thriller novel, one where a murderer was lurking just outside my door. I knew in advance that 3 days from now, a serial killer would sneak into this apartment building. He even had the audacity to leave me a note, boldly declaring I was his final target. I tried everything, calling the police, attempting to leave the apartment, but nothing worked. Looking at the wobbly front door and the rotting wooden windows, I felt a moment of despair, but I quickly shook it off. I checked my bank balance, made sure I had enough funds, and then immediately contacted 5 different renovation companies. If I couldn't leave, then I would make sure that killer couldn't come in either. This story was full of twists, just like a suspense novel where everyone around the protagonist is hiding something. The killer was stalking the apartment, and the plot paused right when the protagonist began to realize that even the neighbors and visiting friends were lying. I remember cursing the author for stopping the story at such a tense moment. Now, as the person inside the story, I wanted nothing more than to crawl into the author's head and demand the truth. But that wasn't useful now. I might not be able to defeat the killer or figure out who was lying, but I could fix the most vulnerable part of this apartment, its security. I hired 5 renovation companies from different regions, knowing full well from all the crime thrillers I'd read that a killer could easily disguise themselves as a contractor. So I had the 5 companies monitor each other, and I stayed beside them the entire time. I didn't even trust the idea of them taking turns unsupervised. Under my direct supervision, I had the front door, windows, floor, and ceiling all rebuilt to my specifications. I threw out anything that could hide a person, like the huge wardrobe and the bed with that creepy gap underneath, and replaced it with a simple mattress directly on the floor. You'd think that was enough, but of course it wasn't. I also had surveillance cameras installed at the entrance. But if you've read enough mystery novels, you'll know that cameras can be tampered with. What if one of the installers or someone posing as one was the killer? What if they swapped out the live feed with fake footage? So I contacted 9 surveillance companies, split into 3 groups. Each time a batch of cameras was installed, one group did the work, and the other 2 monitored them. I even tugged on each of their faces to make sure no one was wearing a mask. 6 high-resolution hidden cameras were installed covering every angle of the door. I finally had surveillance with no blind spots. But even that wasn't enough. What if, after failing to get inside, the killer decided to burn the place down? I hired 3 more contractors to install fire suppression systems in the ceiling. If fire ever broke out, water would spray instantly. But that still couldn't stop a fire sweeping through the whole building. So I called the fire department, cleared the apartment of every flammable item, bought 5 fire extinguishers, and 3 gas masks just in case. By this point, you'd think I'd feel safe. Still not even close. All that renovation noise would have surely drawn attention from whoever was watching in the shadows. So before the work even began, I put up a curtain over the front door to block the view. Let them guess what I was up to. They couldn't stop me. But the apartment wasn't ready just yet. I looked around and realized something major was still missing. Food. What if the killer was incredibly patient and waited outside for weeks? What would I eat? What if they cut the water or electricity? What would I drink? How would I survive? The worst outcome would be to build a perfect fortress and then starve or suffocate inside it. That would be the dumbest death imaginable. So I stocked up. 200 pounds of rice, 200 pounds of flour, plenty of vegetables and meats, all kinds of medication, and jugs of purified water. I even bought 3 live chickens and a bunch of hydroponic vegetable kits, just in case. I carried everything back myself, not wanting to let a single delivery person inside. After sweating buckets hauling everything in, I still didn't rest. I used a metal detector and an infrared scanner to inspect every item. What if the killer had infiltrated the warehouse or delivery crew? Fortunately, everything passed inspection. I also installed a generator in the utility room. As long as I used power sparingly, I could still live a relatively normal life. After a quick break, I headed out again. Now maybe you're thinking, fortified apartment, tons of food, safe at last? Not quite. Anyone who's read enough suspense knows signal jammers are deadly. The killer could block all communication and trap me in a dead zone. So I bought 2 satellite phones. That way, when I spotted the killer outside, I could call the police immediately. And let's not forget weapons. One of the most terrifying things in these stories is being unarmed. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I got a baseball bat, a sickle, a riot shield, and a stun baton just in case. I wouldn't use them unless absolutely necessary. Everything was scanned and cleared for safety. Only then did I finally begin to relax. I downloaded dozens of dramas and thousands of novels onto my tablet, especially my favorite, that covered my mental well-being too. At last, with everything in place, I lay down on my mattress and napped for half the day. As night fell, I suddenly noticing someone coming.